Well, hello, everybody. So I want to start off with a little survey based on that incredibly cool introduction. How disappointed are you to see me just sort of sitting here? Well, that's why I have this incredible privilege of introducing our first guest today, Jack Daniel. Hey, Jack.
Hey there. Good to be with you.
What a privilege to have you on the show. And I don't say that lightly, because I've listened and learned about you for a long time. You're considered by many to be one of the sort of the founders, kind of the industry. You started something that was really quite revolutionary with B-sides, and you kind of serve in silence. You're like one of these unsung cyber heroes that our show is designed to highlight. That's what I think.
I get way too much credit for the work of others. I think of myself as a mentor, tormentor, cheerleader, and doing some admin stuff. But I get way too much credit. Things like B-sides are community events, and it takes dozens or hundreds or thousands of people to make them happen. And that's true of a lot in society and in security.
Yeah, indeed. And you also just now are showing, a very authentic and incredibly valuable human trait, which is humility. One of the things that I've learned in my kind of Forrest Gump, journey into the digital universe is, and I actually got this from a general. He said, we serve in silence. And I never really, kind of understood that as a citizen or not a member of the community with the capital C. But I'm taking a deep breath for you because, everything you do and everyone in the community, it's stressful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. It absolutely is. And you talk about serving in silence. One of my side projects, one of them, a whole bunch of them, is the Shoulders of InfoSec, which is a wiki and series of presentations on foundational figures in our field and industry. And you can't not talk about the ones everybody knows, but I make sure that when I mention Alan Turing, I also mention Doc Keane or Gordon Welchman, who, unless you're a history or crypto nerd, you've never heard of, but the Bomba wouldn't have been built the way it was, might not have come out if it weren't for engineers behind the scenes taking the brilliant man's ideas and making them actually functional. And I love to tell stories like that to remind us all that we all make a difference, or we all can make a difference.
Indeed, and a rising tide lifts all ships, and that's one of the beautiful things about the community with the capital C's. You are the helpers. You're the good people, and one of the things that I really love doing is I love dealing with the ISACs. Information sharing and analysis centers. I've been privileged to have the head of the healthcare ISAC and auto ISAC and water ISAC and all that, because they are the conduit of this community building that you're talking about. And is it true? Is it a valid statement that the criminals are kind of horizontally organized and they share information freely, but the sort of the defenders are a little more vertically structured, because of money or IP or law?
Yeah, there are a handful of issues. It's not like all of the criminals are working together, but a lot of those who are motivated by financial goals as opposed to nations or nation state type entities or major political or military activist groups, but the ones that are trying to make a buck, they kind of work in pools. And so credit card fraud has their own things, spam and phishing, and the fact that they have their own toolkits, tool chains. There are people that sell those toolkits and support them. And so there are support communities like there are for some of the tools that we use in IT and security. They've got their own communities. They're just different. We have some challenges that like the ISACs try to overcome. But we have challenges in that we often are competing with our peers. We're often competing with our friends. There's intellectual property, people that are doing certain types of security work, particularly if they're doing penetration testing or red teaming or compliance or anything where you get a good look at a customer or client's situation. you're under NDAs. You can't talk about it. If you're doing forensics and incident response, you have to let the impacted organization handle that usually. So you can't share as freely as you would like. It is one of the values of community and connecting and building networks because imagine that you and I both worked at regional banks in somewhere, southeastern U.S. We compete, our billboards are opposite each other on Interstate 95.
Right.
I can't pick up the phone and say, we got popped with this ransomware and they did it this way. But I can ping you on Signal and say, hey, did you read the write-up on CVE 2021 dash something?
Right.
You really should. I can't say any more than that. But, you can't wink. We'll do it on voice or text, so there are no winky emojis. But, that level is as far as we can go oftentimes. The challenges are real. And then there are, like I said, competitive issues too. Some people just don't want to share. Some people think that their stuff is magical and special. And so, there's real challenges. But I think that the ISACs and building communities and building networks really helps us break down the barriers we can break down and figure ways to maybe toss a hint over the fence when we can't pull the fence down.
This notion of kind of isolation is, I think, a relative isolation, I guess, is a very good kind of segue into the topic of today's show. When people feel like they're alone, especially in, a battle space like the digital universe where it's relentless and it never stops. And the only time you hear about cybersecurity or hacking is when the criminals win. How do you create meaningful human connections to ensure you're bringing out the best in people and that they have good sort of mental health?
That's a real challenge, and the pandemic has made that profoundly worse. I got to start with a disclaimer. I am not a therapist or psychologist. I am somebody that has watched certain aspects of mental health, stress and burnout particularly, but mental health in general, in the industry and in life in general for a long time. That said, for connection with people, we have a challenge that we've got digital, we've got online, Hangouts or Zoom or whatever you use, and those are a good substitute, but they're not the same as face-to-face. It really is great to see people, but we really miss that. It's also a factor in, I think, in some of the other challenges we face in the fields of security, and that is that we tend to work alone. We tend not to be in teams anyway. A lot of remote work, and as you mentioned, this is physiological. This is lizard brain stuff.
Right.
When it's how you survive on the plane. When you are cut off from your tribe, your body knows that it's dangerous. There isn't a team looking out for each other, and this is something that that may never make it to the prefrontal cortex, but it gets you. And what does that do? It raises your stress level ever so slightly, unless there's a reason to be scared, which doesn't sound that bad, but elevation of stress raises some hormones. It raises your attentiveness. And if you are lost and worried about saber-toothed tigers, or if you're in scouting or whatever at the YMCA on a hike and you get lost, that little extra zip is going to you're going to hear things. You're going to get back with the group. But if that continues, one of the first things it suffers is sleep, because we don't sleep as well because we have to be cautious. As soon as our sleep goes away, there's a potential for a cascading failure. And, sleep is often the canary if you can't sleep. And the past year with the pandemic, the number of people with sleep stories, the number of people talking about the COVID dreams, which are not necessarily all nightmares, a lot of nightmares, but just utterly bizarre stuff because we're stressed. And then we go into an adversarial role, right? We go into bad guys are attacking us. We go into being a cost center, not a profit center, and often treated that way in the organization. And there we are. It's like, how do we deal with this? So how do you make the connections? Well, one of the things is to communicate well. And this is, I've seen, I did a career, I have a site where I post the occasional career study, and they're just informal surveys, but, asked how well you think your organization is communicating. And I was really pleasantly surprised to see that a lot of organizations in the security community are doing a very good job of communicating through the pandemic. And how that'll last as it drags on, I don't know. But, over communicate. If people are tuning out, that's okay. But make sure people know what's going on. Make sure they know what your plans are. Make sure you have some face-to-face time. Most people are sick of too much time on Zoom. But on the other hand, one-on-one or small groups, get on, see your team, see
Yes.
people that you're working with. And when it's safe, it's time to start seeing people again. And a lot of people really.
Oh, I mean, I think it's going to be, excuse the interruption, I think we're going to have like the roaring 20s. I mean, people are just going to go nuts.
Right.
And speaking of like overall human behavior, let's introduce to the show Leanne Potter. Hi, Leanne. How you doing?
Hi, how's it going?
Boy,
Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so glad to have you join us. And amongst other things, Leanne is a cyber anthropologist. Well, let me ask a personal question. How's this show going so far?
It's good. I'm not doing too much sort of behavioral analysis at the moment, but Jack's stealing all my best lines.
Indeed. And so what's your origin story relating, to cyber and anthropology and understanding us humans?
Yeah, so I wasn't always in the tech industry. I got into tech when I was a project manager for a charity, and we had this project, and it was Solve Destitution. Big project. And we had to figure out a way how we were going to solve destitution, but what did destitution look like? So we opened our doors and people started coming in saying, oh, we heard that you've got this pot of money to do this good work. I've got these issues. And it tended to be people who were really going through the worst times in their lives. So, homelessness, drug addiction, fleeing domestic violence, hadn't eaten in days. So just really anything bad that could happen in someone's life, they'd come through our doors looking for help. And what my team was sort of realizing is more and more were the thing that was stopping them from getting out of destitution was their inability to access online services, because there was a big push at that time for all the sort of key services like accessing the benefit system, housing, education, even mental health and addiction programs. It was all, you have to do an online form. Now, these people didn't have access to the internet or even had any experience, going online. They'd never needed to use a computer before. So there was a lot of fear and anxiety. And I thought, it's not really good that we've sort of created these services and the people who need it the most really don't have access to them and can't really utilize them. We've not really thought about that user journey. So I became really interested in what's known as the digital divide, which suggests that if you don't have access to online services, that you are socially disadvantaged. And boy, during COVID, we've certainly seen that really manifest itself at the moment between the info haves and the info have nots. If you're not online at the moment, you can't work. If your job needs to have access to the internet and you don't have that, you're in trouble. And so I, as I say, became really interested. I thought, I'm going to study this formally. So I became a digital anthropologist to start with, really interested in actually, with the technological advances, how is that influencing culture and how is it influencing the way we engage with each other? And particularly in terms of how do we create communities around online cultures? And from then I thought, well, I want to get a job in tech. So how do I do that? I decided to teach myself how to code. Bearing in mind, this is a totally non-technical background.
How did you just, wait, hold on. How did you just start? What was the first thing you did?
So I was just like, oh, I want to get hands-on with tech. So how am I going to do that? And I'm in my 30s at this point. Oh, I'll just go on free code camp and teach myself how to code. So that's what I did. I I treat coding like a full-time job. So I'd get up at 9 o'clock in the morning. I would sit down until lunchtime, coding all day, learning how to code, have a lunch break, do it for until the evening. And then in the evening, I would go to things like B-sides and other tech meetups and really get ingrained with that tech community. And just like Jack was saying, finding your tech tribe is really important. And I have no doubt that had I not found my tech tribe to sort of push me along, keep me going as I was going on this tech journey,
Well,
I would probably
on that point, forgive the interruption. I just want to show a graphic about this from B-Sides. This is just a sampling of the incredible different locations, right, Jack? Tell us what we're looking at here, and tell us a little bit more about B-Sides and its mission.
Yeah, so that's just a banner. I quickly did an internet search, found a bunch of logos, and created that image quilt just to use as a banner. But as of today, we're looking at there have been 655 B-Sides events around the world.
Wow.
I have the numbers over there. I could look over here and tell you an exact number. 52 countries.
Wow.
And, 100 and how many? Let's see. 52 countries. Events have been held in, come on, you can do it, 186 different cities around the world.
Wow.
Since the first one in July of 2009. And we made that happen as a one-off event. We didn't think we were creating a series. We didn't think we were creating a movement. What we were doing was giving a place for people to share information that didn't have a place elsewhere. Some of it was not quite ready for prime time, people who had great ideas but needed some coaching. Some of it was things that were very interesting but to a small group. And the big conferences really, they're not thrilled if they 12 people in a room. Small events, if you get 12 passionate people in a room, you're having a great time. And some of it was just stuff that didn't quite fit. It was maybe too social or political, but it was still old school hacker mindset. And then some of it was things that people wanted to share, but they wanted to make sure there was no press, there was no recording. Maybe they were waiting for a vendor to issue a patch. Maybe they were just trying to help you get through the day in ways that were important. Some of the early off-the-record talks were on stress and burnout, where people could speak candidly about mental health. And they were certainly things we didn't want anybody to be in there with a recorder or a camera. Didn't want the press taking direct quotes of people telling about the profound issues they had faced. So, we just made one happen, and people liked the idea. And so a few more happened and a few more, and we realized something had started. And so we formalized it slightly, but not a lot. It's very relaxed. It's not like running one of the big name conferences that are franchised. There's some basic rules and there's some basic trademarks, and you've got to be good to and for your community. A couple other rules, and then that's it. And being relaxed means that B-Sides leads should feel like it was organized by the local organizing team and it was run in Leeds. B-Sides in San Francisco should feel like San Francisco. B-Sides in London feels like London. B-Sides in Hyderabad should feel like you're in Hyderabad. And that's been the great success, is that these aren't cookie cutter. It's not, to make fun of a hotel brand. It's not the Holiday Inn Express experience everywhere you go. It's different.
Yeah, I mean, everyone says that too. So, the tone, the culture that you've created really has permeated very beautifully. So in a moment, I'm going to invite some of our rapid responders who just responded to our little equivalent of a bat signal to join the show. So if any of you are standing by, just turn on your cameras, then we'll be able to bring you in the stream and join the discussion. So let's drill down now, into something that when I saw this, I could not really believe it. This was a survey that showed almost 40% of cybersecurity professionals that the skill shortage was causing, such a high rate of burnout and stress turnover, because this stuff is relentless, isn't it?
Well, that's it. What I always think about is what my difficulty is working in cybersecurity is it's very seldom project based. You know what I mean? Like you very seldom get that opportunity where you go, oh, that's the end of that. It's just like you say, so relentless. And I just picture, the image of the bucket of water and the rat walking around until it, keeps swimming until it stops swimming. And we need to get out of that mindset. And it also made me think about as well is the meme, the graphic where it shows, there's the head of engineering, he's in bed all tucked up, the CISO's all tucked up in bed. But then, you go to the CISO and he's out of bed. And that shouldn't be funny. It should be, we should be sort of calling out this behavior. It's just like, we need to support the security team so much more than it does, because it ain't easy with this kind of PR rep we have, as well as, typically be not one of the most favorite teams in an organization as well. And that in combination with, the long hours, the high stress, and that the sometimes lack of appreciation from, the teams in the organization just really can weigh down on you.
Yeah, it seems really completely unjust. And what a great segue to introduce another rapid responder. This is Max Justice. Hey, Max, how you doing?
Howdy, all. Great. Yourself?
Great. So just to clear up, that is your real name, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, because I have to draw you in one of our comics. I mean, Max Justice, come on,
Hey, you would not be the first time someone drew that cartoon character.
Well, meet Jack Daniel, by the way. So I'm not even going to say any more about that collaboration. So, Max, you have a very interesting, kind of origin story. What's your take on kind of the issue and opportunities of mental health and stress in the cybersecurity community? And you take a deep breath. That's a good idea.
Yeah. So, Leanne, thank you for the laughter this morning. I did laugh. It is not funny. Our CISOs are they're going cuckoo, and they're not the only ones really in security. We are infecting our brothers and sisters at the very bottom with this cuckoo-ness that we somehow over the last year especially have lost touch with our people. We're not talking to people one-on-one anymore. We're talking to bubbles with little initials in it. And because people are losing touch with their teams, they're losing touch with their connections to their teams. They're losing touch with those that they used to talk with to cope, whether it was on a personal level or professional level. And the real big problem is everyone is failing to realize that everyone is having that same challenge. So it's this really bad cycle that we're in. And then on top of all of that, we are burning out our cybersecurity staff saying, hey, patch Tuesdays, it's Wednesday morning. Why is that patch not in? What do you mean you didn't test that patch before it went in? And then we wonder why we get challenges or problems with our security. So it's a really big problem. It's a really big challenge. I want to get more people involved in having this discussion. I think it's really a simple solution. We have a lot of engineers, and what do engineers tend to do? They tend to over-engineer. And I'm a farmer. I like to keep things simple. So please talk to me on the most simple, basic level, because even though I'm working on my PhD, I use really small words.
Well, I mean, just to build on that, I don't know if our audience knows, it's not something I say, very often, but, I too have a PhD. I'm poor, hungry, and driven. Anyway, speaking of, sort of PhD type guys, I'm going to see if I can get Phil Beauvais, to join us now. I'm not sure if his camera is going to be on at the second or not, but there might be, a good reason for that. Phil, are you there? Hello, Phil? All right. We'll come back to Phil in a moment, but he has a very interesting story. Phil Beauvais is in charge, or just recently retired from the NSA, where he was responsible for East Asia, amongst other things. So we'll see if we can get him on camera in a moment. Jack, let's turn to you now to go a little bit deeper into something that I love about B-Sides, which is that there are no recordings. It's authentic, communication. It's real life emotions. Can you share with our audience, some of the mental health related conversations, in a blinded way, of course, that you.
So, the B-Sides events, some are recorded, some are not, and it's always an option. That's one of the things. If somebody doesn't want to be recorded somewhere where it's recorded and streamed. But in some of the, let's see, a couple of the more interesting ones to me, there have been a lot of interesting ones, but more interesting ones to me that happen in the underground tracks, the non-recorded ones, were the mental health stuff, the stress and burnout stuff. And, in one case, it was somebody that had a career in law enforcement, did SWAT work, was a SWAT team leader, retired, went into cybersecurity, and he was confused by the level of stress he felt. He was confused by the burnout because he literally no longer had people shooting at him.
Wow.
But then he thought about it. You can't take your work home with you. They don't let you drive the tank home. You don't kick down your neighbor's door for practice. And as harsh as it is, there was a very simple math at the end of each operation. And, I won't be too graphic, but there was a really simple math. Did they get the bad guys? Did people get hurt or worse? And that's an extreme example, but he said, this never ends. I have a problem. I'm fighting it. I try to go home. I can't sleep. And so I've been thinking about trying to fix this thing. We got to get the company back online because they got compromised. We got to get them back online. And so every hour that I take to try to rest and clear my head, we're not getting our customer back online. And that was a different kind of stress for him. We were 10 minutes in before the first conversations about attempted suicides came in. People just opened right up. And
right here. We have some breaking news. 25% of security leaders have physical and mental problems that are the direct result of workplace stress, and 17% of those surveyed have even turned to substance abuse.
In the studies and surveys that I've done, there's a progression on substance use. Alcohol is used heavily in our industry, and the progress, if we can call it that, is in the most recent times when I've discussed this, more and more of us are aware of the dangers of alcohol and feel bad about the amount we use. That's the progress. It's not that we've stopped relying on these things. It's that we know it's not great, but it's how we cope. And it may be legal drugs, it may be drugs that are not legal, but we do what we can to survive this. And there are real pressures. And one of the things that we've touched on a few times in the workplace, in the organizations that we're in, we need to take care of each other. I believe that we have a higher incidence of stress and burnout than most industries. I believe the cybersecurity field is conducive to it and is more problematic. And people always push back on that. They say we're well paid. We can always get another job. And the reality is we can't. A lot of those skills that we're looking for, it's not easy. If you look at the number of qualified and experienced IT people who are struggling to find work because organizations are not in a position to train them. I'm being kind. Organizations are either not in a position or not willing to take people who have a proven work record and tune up their skills to fit. And also, we can't talk about the skills shortage without talking about briefly how broken recruiting is because of the nature of our field. The people that do the recruiting don't understand by and large, and so there are a lot of frustrations there. But the bottom line for me is that the people that are suffering are our friends, they are our coworkers, and they're our peers. And like most problems in the world, let's take care of our own first and then spread the circle out from there. And, these problems are real. We need to take care of them. And I'll take it a step further. Old hippie here. I want you to be nice because that's the nice thing to do.
If I could give you a virtual way, hold on. I want to start. You don't want to see a grown man cry from joy, but I'm giving you a big. I have an idea. I want to give you a virtual hug. So as a proxy, I'm just going to use my little doll here, which by the way has a very practical purpose. It keeps my marriage intact because when I squeeze the doll's hand, it says these affirmations, such as this random one, which is,
"Good morning. I've made you breakfast in bed again."
So this is my Jack. I'm giving you, a big hug from a distance. Actually, Leanne, all of you, all my guests, big hug, yay!
So, first of all, I'm not going to push the button on my best companion because we don't want you to have to put a very large explicit tag on. But I will say this for those people who don't get the be nice angle. There's a Machiavellian approach to this too. There's a very selfish approach. If you don't take care of your employees, your coworkers, your team, and your peers, they're going to burn out. They're going to get sick of it. They're going to leave, and you will have to fix it yourself. And then you'll get burned out, and then maybe you end up in a classic burnout case. Maybe you'll be one of those alcohol or other drug abuse statistics. Maybe you'll be one of those statistics of relationship issues. So I'd like you to be nice because that's the nice thing to do.
Right on.
But if you don't want to buy that, that's fine. But if you don't force yourself to be nice, you will suffer the consequences of it, especially as a manager.
Well, let's do that. That should be our mantra, and it really fits with something that we've been working on here on our show, which is, we kind of metaphorically think of the cybersecurity and IT communities as this, giant aircraft carrier. It's big and strong and powerful, but kind of slow to move. But it's got all these jets landing, all this crazy stuff happening all around it. Our mission, in part, is to kind of pivot the community from fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which there's plenty to be afraid of, plenty to be uncertain, and for sure be doubtful, to fun. So our thing is, from FUD to fun, and I think being nice along the way is a great idea. And then you had some thoughts that you wanted to share about this aspect of mental health.
Yeah, so I totally echo everything Jack said about, we need to take care of our own and help our own mental health, because we're only as strong, as a team together. So once we get our house in order, as it were, we can really take on the world. But I think one thing we also need to consider is the reason why the hackers are so good at what they do. Some people say that they're the best at A/B testing than any other sort of developer or tester is. It's because they're using our mental health against us. So, COVID has been the biggest sort of driver in human behavior testing that there is.
Right.
And, as soon as that sort of all the phishing scams around COVID and everything else related to all the scams around COVID sort of came into play, obviously the environment we're trying to protect, all our workforce are now remote, dealing with it by themselves. And we need to sort of remember that actually they're using our own mental health against us, because we're all burnt out, not just the security team, but we're all burnt out in our own sort of separate way. And the way we sort of tackle that is, as a security function, our message when we sort of talk about security awareness and training tends to be one of fear. And, we tend to sort of say, oh, don't click on that link because something bad will happen. And in a time when we're constantly thinking about fear outside of our lives, let alone just sort of work, that can be really demoralizing. Yes. And then it can lead to a head in the sand mentality. And once you've got that kind of culture where, everyone's head is in the sand, people stop reporting things. People stop saying to the security team, I think I've clicked on something. Can you help me? And we need to know about that rapid. Any security person worth their salt will say, if someone's, clicked on something and it wasn't intentional, we should never really shout at them or tell them off or anything like that. It should be a culture where they can turn around and say, yes, I will report it so we can act quickly. An intention, a genuine mistake should never be punished. It's the learning behind that. But if they're in a sort of situation where security is always kind of, Debbie Downer is always constantly saying something bad will happen if you click on this link, you're never going to develop that trust culture. And in times of, when we're sort of separate and our mental health is low, we're all feeling kind of low in general, trust is such a key element of the security aspect. We need to have trust in our employees, our colleagues on the, the other side of the wire, that they will get in touch with us if something goes wrong. But it works the other way. They need to get in touch with us. They need to know that they can get in touch with us.
I just want to build on that really important point. You realize, of course, like I realize, we work in an industry that's called zero trust. I mean, you can't get any less trustworthy than zero unless you get into negative numbers. And, this is not something I was going to include in the show, but, one of the interesting things that we're doing pertaining to, awareness is to try to make things entertaining and engaging, rather than sort of, kind of death by PowerPoint. So here's kind of a world premiere of a prototype. We recently did a joint venture with an Israeli company to take our characters and kind of bring them to life in what will be 3D training. And so this is Phoebe the Fisher.
I'm Phoebe Fisher. The Fisher hunts its prey by pretending to be legitimate communication from a trusted company or from the hijacked identity of a friend, colleague, or family member. Using one of many ruses, the Fisher encourages the potential victim to divulge sensitive information such as login IDs, passwords, PINs, social security numbers, etc. This information is quickly used to steal money from accounts and to apply for fraudulent loans and credit cards.
So that's kind of a world premiere of a prototype of a whole training program that we're working on to make it fun. I'd like to invite another great guy, a friend of the show, to be sure, Anthony Martini, into the show. He's a rapid responder today. Hey, Anthony.
Hey, Gary. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah. So what do you think about, well, first of all, you want to tell us a little bit about your background. I know there's some things you can say and some things you cannot say. So we are live. It's up to you.
Thanks. I can pretty much speak to everything. So I got into the security space through just one day saying, I'm interested in this. I went to an OWASP meetup, the Open Web Application Security Project. And that was when I was in New York. And the folks were so cool, and the subject area went straight over my head. But I was just so enthralled by it, and I just kind of said, "Hey, this is my tribe," as Jack, you were mentioning. And so from there, I ended up going to a few schools and studying computer science, networking, and math. There was no real cybersecurity programs at the time, and then I did a scholarship for service program, and ended up working in IT for the government, and that brought me to speak on the show today.
Well, I think you're being humble, just like everyone, that I meet in this ecosystem, which is great. And so, you're a in the weeds practitioner. How is your stress level?
My stress level is medium, but public speaking like this sometimes raises it up. But
no, sorry. I mean, aside from this exact moment, I'm saying generally, how are you doing, in your career regarding stress?
Yeah, actually, I found a lot of ways to manage it pretty well. I think it's important to have a lot of hobbies. I think it's important to find time to completely disconnect from the digital. So I will just turn off all my devices and throw them in a blackout bag and just go off on my merry way. Another thing is I'll try to do some meditation or take a nap if that's what happens when I close my eyes. It is what it is. I also have a lot of friends that I can call upon who sort of explain to me things when I get confused, or if I have a suspicious security type of thing. I'm thinking, what's going on with my computer? I have a lot of friends I can call, and who are actually pretty in the weeds, even more so than I, can explain to me what's happening. It usually makes me feel better. So I have a lot of friends I can consult.
That going back to you, Jack, about the notion of friends, and I would imagine, is it safe to assume that after folks attend the B-sides, they do form these, much more meaningful connections, with other people? Is that one of the outcomes, from B-sides?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's true for a lot of different types of conferences. Some are more conversational in nature, which makes that a lot easier. And that's one of the goals of B-Sides, but it's not unique to us, certainly, but it is something that we strive for in B-Sides. And, this transcends work pressures. There are some of the B-Sides groups that are a chosen family, for lack of a better term. There are some folks in the B-Sides Las Vegas team, which I have worked with since before the first event, that are incredibly close. That we've helped each other through some ugly times. I'll spare you the details, but it's friends, not just working through work issues, but working through, that's another factor we haven't really mentioned. We all have lives where, no matter what we pretend we are superhuman, everything that happens to everybody else in family and health and all of those things, they happen to us too. And then we go to work in a challenging environment. So those community bonds, friends, as I mentioned earlier, you can lean on them for sharing and helping with the technical challenges, but some of those friendships become strong enough to get you through the ugly parts of life too.
Well, to build on that point, I was having a conversation, with Max the other day, and he said something about just the words that are used in the cybersecurity and IT ecosystem, like such as vulnerability, like being vulnerable. Max, can you amplify a little bit, how these words matter?
They matter a lot. And first, let me start off by saying something I should have started out by saying, because they do matter. So thank you, Gary. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to listen and participate and talk to this amazing group, because it's the words that we're choosing today that other people are hearing. And we talked about the negativity in security and the dark and the spookiness. I came from those 3-letter agencies, and I know what that world's like. And I'm glad I'm really not in it anymore, because it's a different culture, it's a different mindset, but it's also a different vulnerability, and we're all vulnerable. And it goes kind of back to what I was talking about earlier, and understanding that we're all vulnerable and what our vulnerabilities are, so we can be stronger individually and collectively. Because we are not in this alone, and no one can be successful alone. It requires a lot of assistance, a lot of support, and sometimes even a bit of luck. And I hate to say that, but you can bring upon your own luck. And you can do that by understanding your vulnerabilities, mitigating those risks, and enabling you, your team, your organization to be able to drive on and live another day.
Yeah, but how do you help us understand? Anyone can jump on to build on this point, Max, which is, how do you give people the kind of the psychological air to breathe, so they're okay being vulnerable and not have that kind of held against them, in some way, career-wise. Leanne, you want to opine on that, or?
Yeah, so I've been doing a lot of work around how do you create a persuasive message, and the studies shown, there's 4 ways you can be really persuasive, and that's through authority. You will do this because we're in charge and we'll tell you. There's fear, which, I've already discussed. It's not a great topic to do if people are already in a high stress state. There's humor, and then there's peer pressure. And by peer pressure, I mean disapproval, like, oh, Dave's done this and he's made us look bad as a team, that kind of disapproval. What the studies have shown is that humor always gets people's attention. Humor always enables people to really ingest that message. So whenever you're doing sort of cyber awareness training, always try and go for humor, because it's more memorable, the message sticks longer, and it's more relatable.
Well, speaking of humor,
and we could all do with a laugh at the moment, can't we?
It's a great segue. We should take this show on the road. Are you all up to it? I mean, you want to be a part of my life? Because, whether you like it or not, I'm part of yours. So let me introduce you to a very special guest. Hey Phil, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Gary.
As a rapid responder, this is really quite a treat for our audience. To make a very long story short, Phil was worked with the NSA. Was it almost 40 years?
Yep, 40 years, except for a couple of years at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence.
Wow. And, one of the things that's amazing about Phil and his, wait, someone might have to mute because someone's getting yelled at. I hope that's not stressful. Okay. Phil, one of the things that's kind of amazing about your background is you were very involved in the human element of the NSA. I don't want to call it human resources. I think it was much more than that. Can you give our audience, a little bit of a flavor of your mission and maybe some advice, on how to manage complex, stressful situations? Like, you were one of Edward Snowden's bosses.
Yeah, I was in that organization actually. Can you hear me okay? Because I'm outside.
Yeah, we can hear you okay.
Okay, yeah, well, thanks for that. I've been really excited listening to this conversation, the whole thing, and especially the last couple of minutes. One of the things after a long career in mission management and operations that I've been focused on is what this all means for leadership and leadership development of our people. I'm a firm believer that we need to develop leaders in tandem with the way that we're innovating in technology. Yep. I think there are practical reasons for doing that. And in the year of COVID, I think, and this was alluded to, psychological safety couldn't be more important. But for me, most of my experience has been on Russia and the Soviet Union, North Korea, and China. So I was scared a lot. And I see, the human element being our comparative advantage if we can harness it. And so I'm really interested in ideas for how we can change culture, have the right kinds of activities and programs for leaders so that we can really leapfrog over where we are today in leadership and leadership development so we can keep pace with what we need to do operationally.
And so now that you've left the NSA, I'm sure you've got many, many great years ahead of you career-wise. Are you? How are you using the kind of the unique skill set that you had in a highly technical organization? You were like the human one or bridge or something. How are you going to deploy that now going forward? What are you going to do next?
Well, I just retired this past winter and just got my vaccines. So I'm about ready to join the world again. But mostly what I've been doing is virtual and a lot of mentoring. I'm actually mentoring a cohort out in Hawaii at Indo-PACOM. And that's really, really important, of course, bringing up the next generation in technologists and leaders.
Indeed.
A lot of one-on-one mentoring. This, of course, working with you, partnering with you, Gary, has been an amazing experience.
Oh, thank you.
But I'm still finding my way. But if I were to define my mission, it's just as I described: is how can we, keep a pace with technology on the leadership side to make all the changes that you guys have been talking about this whole hour, really.
Yeah, and boy, that sure is needed. So speaking of the whole hour, my goodness, time just flies when you're having fun. So I'm going to go around and start with you, Jack, to ask you two things. One is, how does our audience get more information, about B-Sides or anything else you might be working on? How do they connect with you?
So the easiest way to find me is on Twitter, Jack_Daniel on Twitter, or if you go to Security B-Sides, all crushed together, and that's BSIDES.org, securitybsides.org. That will take you to the B-Sides wiki, where you can see all upcoming events and a little bit about the past 655 that are out there. And you can just find me at work, JDaniel, JDaniel, at tenable.com for work stuff. Security Voices podcast. I'm out there on the internet doing stuff occasionally.
Oh, I didn't know that. So you work at Tenable now?
Yep. I've been at Tenable about 10 years now.
Oh, that's cool. And you have a podcast. Why don't you tell our audience about it? So maybe.
Yeah. So I've been involved in a bunch of different podcasts over the years. I was with Paul and Larry on what is now Security Weekly for many years. But then when I moved south, I stopped, but I missed it. So a couple of years ago, a friend of mine, Dave Cole, who is experienced product guy and has founded a startup. He and I put together a podcast that's a long form, non-commercial, just conversational. We have one guest, and the conversations usually run 50 minutes to an hour and 15, hour and 20. It's long form conversations, and they're with financiers, entrepreneurs, executives, all over the place. So,
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't say I'd love to be a guest on your show if you're ever scraping the bottom of the barrel or something, or
anyway, Yeah, so that's securityvoices.org, and we put them out every 2 or 3 weeks. We just took a bit of a hiatus because, well, he's a startup founder, so. The spare time fairy has not visited us a lot lately. I'll just put it that way. But securityvoices.org.
Indeed. Well, thanks for everything you do, Jack, and for who you are. Max, so tell us a little bit about how our audience can learn more about you, connect with you, and you have any cool stuff coming up?
Sure. So thanks again. I really appreciate learning a lot about Jack, Leanne, Phil, Anthony. It really was a pleasure to be part of this group and learn a little bit more. Folks, you can reach me as well as anyone listening. I'm pretty easily found on LinkedIn. It's at Max Justice or at Max Justice, as well as Max at MaximumJusticeCybersecurity.com. And I got 2 interesting blogs coming up. Hope that you all will be interested in hearing about. The first series is The Cyber Farmer. And it's basically about keeping security simple, something that we just over-engineer too much. And the second one is a co-hosted co-blog series that I'm going to be in with a young African-American woman. And our focus is going to be on diversity in cybersecurity. So it's going to be really interesting, and I hope that everyone gets to get involved, because we definitely need more diversity in cybersecurity. That's the only way we're going to beat the adversary and those bad actors. If we work in stovepipes and we work in these small units that aren't focused globally, we will lose. Thanks all.
Amen to that. Well, thanks so much. Leanne, any final words, and how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, just touching on what Max saying about diversity in particular. Being the woman on the panel, I guess I can have a say on that. But one of the interesting things I've read recently was a study, and it said that women are 26% more likely to experience identity theft in the USA. Wow. And they take longer to notice a breach. So they take about 83 days on average rather than 45. And that's all linked to sort of poverty, and access to online services, as I was talking about earlier. So it is very important to have diversity, because they're going for people that don't have the experience, that don't have the knowledge, and the studies seem to show there is women that don't seem to have that experience or knowledge. So it's really important to get that initiative going. In terms of promoting my stuff, I would like that this is work. So yes, you can find me on Twitter at TechSoapbox, and LinkedIn is the best place to reach me. If you've liked the anthropology side of cybersecurity, if you go to YouTube and type in why the cybersecurity industry needs to hire more anthropologists, you'll find a recent video I've done on that. And I've got a website coming soon, but if you go on LinkedIn, I will keep you updated, and there'll be all things cyber anthropology related.
Great. Thanks so much, Leanne. I really appreciate it. Anthony? So what do you think? Did you have a good time on the show?
Oh, yes. Awesome. Fun chatting with everybody.
Good. And how do people get in touch with you? What's the best way to do that?
You can hit me up on LinkedIn. That'd be fine.
And how do you spell your last name so people can get it?
It's Martini, like the drink.
Oh, okay. Say hi to Jack Daniel. I mean, are you kidding me? All right. You guys are spoofing me, right? Or something. So last but not least, my buddy Phil, again, thanks for being a real life unsung cyber hero. And it was very interesting to me, something you just said at the end, that you were afraid. That's something that, many of us just don't put into words. We kind of act brave, on the idea that nobody can tell the difference. But you're saying it's okay to be vulnerable.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially when it's in that psychologically safe environment where your leaders have the right kind of compassion and empathy to go along with it. That is secret sauce right there. So I have a son who's got a master's degree in anthropology, so I'm going to make sure he listens to that program. Thank you for thank you for, he's doing consulting work, so he might be really interested. My last name is Bove, B-O-V-E, and I use my real name most of the time, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, which I usually don't broadcast much, just read, and Facebook as well, mostly for family. And I can make my email available to you guys as well if you need it. Mostly, I'm looking for opportunities to add value in my post-retirement world after 40 years in intelligence operations, cybersecurity, and leadership. So looking for networks and things to do.
Well,
thanks, Gary.
You're welcome.
What an offer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, pro bono too, it doesn't matter.
Yep. And Max, I think you mentioned a little bit earlier about our audience. I had recently someone take a look at our LinkedIn audience, believe it or not. And, my jaw almost dropped on how senior, our audience, really is. And so if any of you are interested in being a guest on the show, just send me an email at Gary@cyberheroescomics.com. And my wife would be really grateful if there are some sponsors out there who are interested in doing something good in the world. Please also just send me a note as well. And on behalf of the entire digital universe, the planet, everyone in it, thank you all so much for who you are and what you do and why you do it, each and every day. And let's keep laughing and be nice to each other, right, Jack?
Yes, indeed.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Take care, all.
Catch you later. Bye.